Hey everybody, I wanted to show you really quickly how you can go about diagnosing a third-party regression in your site using some of the tools available to you in SpeedCurve. So for instance, if you're a media site, you're seeing things change quite a bit, a lot of content changing, a lot of things that are very dynamic. And while the third-party dashboard that we're on right now does a good job of identifying third-party requests, first-party requests, who those offenders are, both in terms of CPU and size and request count, as well as a breakdown and an automatic categorization of those third parties in a waterfall. A lot of times you'll have a situation where something pops up that wasn't there before. So it's kind of hard to identify what was the cause of a specific regression. So take this case. We've got third party size that's shown here, and we see this bump. And you can see how this could be triggered by a performance budget where maybe you've got your budget set at 100 meg, or sorry, 1 meg, 1,000 kilobytes for your performance budget on third-party size. However, the budget gets triggered because all of a sudden this jumps up to 1.17 meg. So really typical case, especially when things are so consistent. And we would encourage you to be focusing on page construction statistics like this when you're setting performance budgets against your synthetic data. However, we don't really know what drove this. The waterfall example isn't going to necessarily point things out glaringly that are glaringly obvious. It was a jump, but it wasn't a significant jump that it's necessarily going to stand out in any of our categorization of our latest requests down here. So one of the other things you can do is you can use the compare view, which we've talked about before, and we've got tutorials on how to use. But if you want to compare and see what caused that regression, you would pick the test before and say compare test. Then you would pick the test after where you saw that regression and say compare test. This takes us into the compare dashboard. And as we go through here, we can get an idea of how the users were impacted, a breakdown across several metrics around what changed, including things like size and page construction. I'm not going to go into a ton of detail on this view because we've done that in other videos. However, I do want to point out that there is a section here that focuses on third party specifically. So we can start to look at this and we can say, all right, so for the common third parties, what was the same between these two tests? What did that look like in terms of size? Well, nothing's really jumping out. Like I said, that's a pretty consistent line when we're looking at size across our common third parties. A 1% increase, 1K essentially for Facebook. So this is an extremely consistent site with our common third parties. But like we do with other requests, we can show you unique third parties. So what was introduced or potentially on a page that wasn't there previously. And we've identified, hey, this looks to be Google APIs. From here, you can click in and look at the actual test detail for that specific test. And in the waterfall, if you've got this enabled through your options where you're showing your third-party request groups, as you drill in, you can see that same categorization of third parties within the waterfall. So if we scroll down and we're looking for the Google APIs here, we scroll down and look through our long list, we can see, hey, wait a minute, there was something that was actually introduced. We've got actually 2 requests that we're coming across, one of them extremely large. And I looked into this a little bit, but as you can see, when you drill into this URL, it's actually not going anywhere. It looks to be something that was added by mistake, potentially related to Google Maps and the APIs there. And if we return back to that original view on our first and third party dashboard, we can see that that was removed very quickly subsequently after that. So hypothetically, you have a performance budget set. It gets triggered for your third party size. You go in here, you do the comparison, you identify that problematic third party, either remove that, alter that, or change your budget if it's actually something that's now acceptable in terms of your baseline, and move on from there. One other thing that you could do is you could say in our third party dashboard, maybe I want to make sure that this doesn't happen again, or this doesn't track up again, or if this is going to be here again in the future, that it doesn't continue to be an issue. Oh, and I just lost the example there. So what I could do is I could come in, find that example, say track history for the Google APIs, set a performance budget on that specifically, even a request count of 0 if you never want that to be on the page or shouldn't be on the page if it was that problematic and you wanted to go to that extreme. Anyway, those are some tools you can use to diagnose third-party issues. I hope that helps.